The news of Princess Liralay's pregnancy spread across Zephyrian space like wildfire, but the reactions were far from universally positive. Within days of the official announcement, David found himself at the center of a political storm that threatened to tear the kingdom apart. "Commander Torres," Advisor Keller said during an emergency council meeting, his voice dripping with barely controlled anger, "you must understand the position this puts us in. The nobility is demanding explanations. Some are calling the pregnancy impossible, others are suggesting unnatural influences." King Vorthak's expression darkened. "What are you implying, Keller?" "I'm not implying anything, Your Majesty. I'm telling you what others are saying. That human technology was used to force a conception that nature itself declared impossible, that this child is an abomination that will corrupt our bloodline." David felt Liralay's hand tighten in his. But before he could respond, she spoke up with quiet steel in her voice. "Advisor Keller, are you questioning the legitimacy of my marriage or my child?" "Your Highness, I would never—" "Good, because what you call impossible, I call proof that the future belongs to cooperation, not isolation." She stood, her pregnancy beginning to show beneath her flowing robes. "This child is not an abomination. This child is hope." Despite the political turmoil, the pregnancy progressed smoothly. Dr. Sarah Kim, a human physician who had been brought in to assist with the unprecedented birth, worked closely with Zephyrian medical experts to monitor both mother and child. "The scans are fascinating," Dr. Kim explained during one of their regular checkups. "The baby appears to be developing characteristics from both species, but in ways we never could have predicted." "Is everything healthy?" David asked, unable to keep the worry from his voice. "More than healthy. The genetic combination is creating some remarkable advantages. Enhanced immune system, improved neural development, even superior bone density. This child is going to be extraordinary." Liralay smiled. "No pressure there?" As the pregnancy advanced, opposition within the Zephyrian nobility grew more organized. A group calling itself the Pure Blood Coalition began holding secret meetings, and rumors of potential rebellion reached King Vorthak's ears. "They're planning something," the king told David during a private meeting in his study. "My intelligence network suggests they may try to act when the child is born." "What kind of action?" David asked. "Unknown. But Keller has been meeting with them regularly, despite my explicit orders to the contrary." David considered this carefully. In the months since his marriage, he had learned to navigate Zephyrian politics with increasing skill, but this situation required more than diplomatic finesse. "Your Majesty, may I make a suggestion?" "Of course." "Let me address the nobility directly. Not as your son-in-law or as a human, but as someone who loves this kingdom and wants what's best for your people." Vorthak raised an eyebrow. "That would be highly irregular. And potentially dangerous. The best solutions usually are. The Great Assembly Hall hadn't seen such a gathering in over a century. Representatives from every noble house in the kingdom filled the ancient chamber, their voices creating a low murmur of anticipation and tension. As David entered, wearing formal Zephyrian court attire that Liralay had helped him select, the murmur died to complete silence. King Vorthak stood at the head of the assembly, his voice carrying across the vast space. "Noble houses of Zephyria, I present to you Prince David Torres, husband to my daughter and father to the heir of our kingdom." The title of prince was new, granted just that morning in a ceremony that had further inflamed the opposition. David walked to the center of the chamber, knowing that every eye was upon him. Every word he spoke would be analyzed and judged. "Lords and ladies of Zephyria," he began, his voice steady despite his racing heart. 6 months ago, I was a simple starship officer whose greatest responsibility was mapping uncharted systems. Today I stand before you as part of your royal family, asking for your trust and support." A voice called out from the assembly. "You ask us to trust an alien who has corrupted our bloodline." David had expected this. "Lord Tyvan, I understand your concerns. Change is frightening, especially when it challenges everything we thought we knew about ourselves." "You understand nothing." Another voice shouted. You're a human who has stolen our princes and defiled our throne. You're right, David said, surprising everyone. I am human. I think differently than you do. I solve problems differently than you would. My child will be different too. The assembly erupted in angry voices, but David raised his hand for silence. But those differences are exactly what your kingdom needs. He turned slowly, making eye contact with as many nobles as possible. For 3 generations, your people have struggled with declining birth rates and increasing isolation. Your scientists tell you that genetic diversity is critical for survival, but you refuse to look beyond your own species for solutions. Because it's unnatural, Lord Tyvan declared. Is it? Or is it evolution? David's voice grew stronger. Every species in this galaxy faces the same choice: adapt or perish. The universe doesn't care about genetic purity or tradition. It only rewards those who are strong enough to change. Lady Sestina, one of the more moderate voices, spoke up. Prince David, even if we accept your arguments, how can we trust a half-breed child to understand our ways and lead our people? Because that child will be raised with the best of both worlds, David replied. They will understand the strength and wisdom of Zephyrian tradition, but they will also understand the value of cooperation and diversity that humanity brings. They will be a bridge between not just our 2 species, but between Zephyria and the galaxy beyond. He paused, gathering his thoughts for what he knew would be the crucial part of his speech. Lords and ladies, I've spent the past 6 months studying your history. Do you know what I found? Your greatest leaders, your most beloved kings and queens, were all innovators. They were the ones who dared to try new approaches when old methods failed. King Zethrin unified the clans by abandoning ancient feuds. Queen Lyrica ended the resource wars by establishing trade instead of conquest. King Vorthok's own father secured peace with the hegemony by recognizing their sovereignty instead of demanding submission. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. These historical examples resonated with the nobility in ways that abstract arguments about genetic diversity could not. Now you face a new challenge, David continued. Not war or famine or political upheaval, but stagnation. Isolation. The slow death that comes from refusing to grow. My child, your future ruler represents the antidote to that poison. Advisor Keller stood, his face flushed with anger. Enough of this rhetoric. You speak of evolution and progress, but what you offer is extinction. The end of everything that makes us Zephyrian. No, David said firmly. What I offer is transformation. The chance to become something greater than you've ever been before. And if we refuse? Keller demanded. Then you'll continue down the path you're already on. Declining birth rates, increasing isolation, slow but inevitable extinction. The choice is yours. The debate that followed lasted for hours. David answered questions, addressed concerns, and gradually began to see attitudes shift. Not universally, there were still nobles who would never accept him or his child but enough to matter. Finally, King Vorthok called for order. The debate will continue in smaller sessions over the coming days. But I want to make one thing clear. Prince David and Princess Lirelei have my complete support. Anyone who threatens them or their child will answer to me personally. As the assembly dispersed, several nobles approached David directly. Some offered cautious support, others asked more detailed questions about his vision for the kingdom's future. Most importantly, the atmosphere had shifted from hostile to merely skeptical. That evening, as David recounted the day's events to Lirelei, she smiled proudly. You did well. I could see minds changing as you spoke. Not all of them. No, but enough. And once our child is born, once people see what this union has created, the rest will follow. 2 months later, on a day when 3 of Zephyria's 4 moons were visible in the sky, considered an auspicious sign by local tradition, Princess Lirelei went into labor. The birth was attended by both human and Zephyrian medical staff, with every precaution taken to ensure the safety of both mother and child. David paced the corridors outside the medical bay, accepting nervous congratulations from nobles who had gathered to await the historic event, after 8 hours of labor. Dr. Kim emerged with tears in her eyes and a smile that lit up the entire corridor. "Prince David," she announced formally, "congratulations. You have a daughter. Both mother and child are healthy and strong." The cheers that erupted could be heard throughout the ship. David rushed into the medical bay to find Lirelei exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle that would change the galaxy forever. The baby was unmistakably beautiful, with her mother's delicate features but slightly more human proportions. Her skin was pale lavender, darker than Lirelei's but lighter than most Zephyrians. Most remarkably, her eyes were a striking violet color that existed in neither parent species. "Hello, little one," David whispered, gently touching his daughter's tiny hand. Her fingers closed around his with surprising strength. "What should we name her?" Lirelei asked softly. Commander David Torres stared at the encrypted message on his personal terminal for the third time, still unable to fully process what he was reading. Earth Command had approved the Zephyrian marriage proposal, and they wanted him to be humanity's representative. The message was signed by Admiral Harrison himself, with a personal note that made David's hands shake slightly. "David, I know this is unprecedented, but Captain Chun's recommendation carries significant weight. Your psychological profile and diplomatic record make you our best candidate. This isn't just about politics, it's about the future of human expansion into the galaxy. The decision is entirely yours, but know that Earth Command has complete confidence in your judgment. Whatever you decide, we'll support you." A soft chime indicated someone at his quarters door. "Come in," David called Lieutenant Yuki Nakamura. The Pathfinder's communications officer and David's closest friend entered with 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this. You've been staring at that screen for 2 hours. Thanks." David accepted the coffee gratefully. "Yuki, can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "If someone offered you the chance to change the course of history, but it meant giving up everything you knew and loved, would you do it?" Yuki settled into the chair across from David's desk. "That depends. Would I be helping people? Potentially millions of them. Multiple species? And the cost?" David gestured at the message on his screen. "Marrying someone I've never met. Becoming the ruler of an alien civilization. Never returning to Earth." Yuki was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Finally, she leaned forward. "David, in the 5 years we've served together, I've watched you put yourself at risk for people you barely knew. Remember the Andromedian refugees? You spent 3 days in those caves, talking that warlord into releasing hostages, and you had no backup and no guarantee you'd make it out alive. That was different, no. It wasn't. It was you doing what you always do, putting others' well-being ahead of your own safety." She paused. "Can you tell me more about this situation?" David highlighted the relevant sections of the message and turned the screen toward her. Yuki read carefully, her expression growing more amazed with each paragraph. "A diplomatic marriage to an alien princess," she said finally. "David, this is like something out of ancient history." "I know. And the strangest part is, I actually want to do it." "Really?" David stood and walked to his viewport, looking out at the stars they were mapping. "Yuki, every first contact mission I've been on, I've wondered what it would be like to really understand another species. Not just their language or customs, but their hopes, their fears, their dreams. This Princess Lirelei King Vorthek described her as brilliant and compassionate. If even half of what he said is true, you're curious about her. I'm curious about her people, about the possibility of building something that's never existed before. A true partnership between species." Yuki smiled. "Then you have your answer." 3 weeks later, David found himself aboard the Use Harmony, watching the Zephyrian flagship grow larger in the viewport. His stomach was doing complicated gymnastics, and he had changed his dress uniform twice before settling on the standard diplomatic configuration. Captain Chun stood beside him, reviewing the cultural briefings they had studied during the journey. "Remember, Zephyrians value directness but also respect for hierarchy. Princess Lirelei speaks fluent English, so you won't need the translation matrix." "And David?" "Yes, ma'am. Be yourself. It's why you're here. The meeting was arranged in a smaller, more intimate chamber than the throne room where the original negotiations had taken place. David entered to find King Vorthak waiting with two other Zephyrians. One was clearly another advisor older, with the same disapproving expression David had seen in the briefing recordings. The other was a young woman who took David's breath away. Princess Lirelei was tall like her father, but more delicately built. Her skin was the same pale blue, but her markings were silver instead of dark blue, creating intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer when she moved. Her large, dark eyes held intelligence and something else, curiosity mixed with careful evaluation. "Commander Torres," King Vorthak said formally, "may I present my daughter, Princess Lirelei?" "Lirelei, this is the human commander David Torres." David bowed as protocol demanded, but Lirelei stepped forward with her hand extended in the human gesture of greeting. "Commander Torres, I'm pleased to meet you." Her English was perfect, with only the slightest accent that made her voice sound musical. David shook her hand, noting that her skin was warm and surprisingly soft. "The pleasure is mine, Your Highness. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Please call me Lirelei. If we're going to consider marriage, we should probably move past formal titles quickly." The direct approach surprised him, but also relieved some of his nervousness. "Thank you, Lirelei. And please call me David." King Vorthak gestured toward a seating area with comfortable chairs arranged in a circle. "I will leave you two to talk privately. Advisor Keller will remain as chaperone as is proper." The older advisor looked even less pleased than before, but took a seat at the far end of the room, clearly trying to give them as much privacy as possible while still maintaining propriety. Once they were seated, Lirelei studied David with obvious interest. "So, David, why did you agree to this meeting? And please be honest, I value honesty above politeness." David had prepared for this question, but looking into her intelligent eyes, his rehearsed diplomatic answers seemed inadequate. "Because I believe in what your father is trying to build, an alliance based on mutual respect and shared values rather than just political convenience." "And the marriage aspect? How do you feel about marrying someone you've never met?" "Terrified," David admitted, "but also hopeful if I'm going to spend my life serving others. I can't think of a better way to do it than helping to bridge the gap between our peoples." Lirelei smiled for the first time, and David felt his heart skip. "That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. My father was right about humans." "Can I ask you the same question? Why did you agree to this arrangement?" "Because I've spent my life studying other species and I've become convinced that isolation will eventually destroy us." Her expression grew serious. "The galaxy is becoming more connected every year. We can either be part of that future or be left behind by it." They talked for 3 hours. David found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation as they discussed everything from interstellar politics to art to their personal interests. Lirelei was indeed brilliant. Her insights into galactic affairs were sophisticated and nuanced. More importantly, she shared his genuine desire to help others. "There's something I need to tell you," Lirelei said as their formal meeting began to wind down. "My father mentioned that I'm considered infertile by our physicians. He did mention that. Yes, what he didn't tell you is why they believe this." She glanced toward Advisor Keller, who was pretending not to listen. "Our reproduction is based on genetic compatibility. Zephyrian males and females must share certain genetic markers to conceive. I lack several of these markers, making it impossible for me to have children with any Zephyrian male." "I'm sorry," David said sincerely. "That must be difficult." "It was, until I began studying human biology." Her eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "You see, human reproduction doesn't rely on the same genetic markers. In fact, human genetic diversity might actually make conception possible where Zephyrian genetics fail." David felt his mouth fall open. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that I might not be infertile at all, just incompatible with my own species." The implications hit David like a physical blow. If Lirelei could have children with a human husband, it would change everything. The heir that King Vorthak had said was impossible might actually be possible. "Does your father know about this theory?" "He suspects. But it's only a theory until proven otherwise. She leaned forward. David, I want you to understand something. If we decide to marry, it won't be for duty alone. I won't trap you in a loveless marriage for political gain. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want us to have time to know each other before we make any permanent decisions. My father has agreed to a formal courtship period. 3 months where you live on our world, learn our customs, and we discover whether we're compatible as individuals. David felt a weight lift from his shoulders. I was hoping you'd say something like that. The idea of marrying someone I barely know is terrifying and archaic, Lirley finished. But the idea of marrying someone I've grown to care for and respect? That's something I could embrace. The next 2 months were unlike anything David had ever experienced. Living aboard the Zephyrian flagship, he immersed himself in their culture while spending increasingly long periods of time with Lirley. She showed him their art galleries filled with living sculptures that responded to emotions. They walked through hydroponic gardens that fed the entire ship's population. She taught him the basics of Zephyrian music, which was based on harmonic frequencies that could actually influence mood and health. More importantly, David discovered that his initial impression of Lirley had been accurate. She was remarkable. Her intelligence was matched by genuine compassion and a sense of humor that often caught him off guard. She was also surprisingly D. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the observation deck of the U's Harmony, watching the massive alien vessel approach through the viewport. The Zephyrian flagship looked like a living creature made of silver and crystal, its surface rippling with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like a heartbeat. After 3 years of careful negotiations, humanity was finally about to meet with King Vorthak himself. Nervous? Asked Commander Marcus Webb, joining her at the VIEWPORT. Sarah shook her head. Excited. This could change everything for our colonies. The Zephyrians controlled 7 star systems rich in rare minerals that human colonies desperately needed. More importantly, they controlled the shipping lanes that connected human space to the Outer Rim territories. For 3 years, humanity had tried to establish trade relations, but the Zephyrians had remained distant and cold. Then, 2 months ago, everything changed. King Vorthak had sent a message requesting a meeting. Not just any meeting, a formal diplomatic summit aboard his personal flagship. The message had been brief but clear. He had a proposition that could benefit both species. Incoming transmission from the Zephyrian vessel, announced Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. Put it through, Sarah. Ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the alien ship. King Vorthak stood before them, towering nearly 8 feet tall. His skin was pale blue with darker markings that resembled tribal tattoos. His eyes were large and dark, with an intelligence that made Sarah feel like he could see right through her. Captain Chun, Vorthak said, his voice deep and resonant through the translation matrix. Welcome to my domain. I trust your journey was peaceful? It was, Your Majesty. Thank you for this opportunity to meet. The pleasure is mine, Captain. I have studied your species for some time now. You are ... interesting. He paused, tilting his head slightly. Please board my vessel with your senior staff. We have much to discuss. 2 hours later, Sarah found herself in an ornate chamber aboard the Zephyrian flagship. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that changed color based on the ambient light. Strange alien plants grew in perfectly arranged patterns, filling the air with a pleasant, sweet scent. King Vorthak sat on what could only be described as a throne, though it looked more like it had grown from the floor than been built. Beside him stood several other Zephyrians in elaborate robes, clearly his advisors and court members. Captain Chun, Vorthak began, your species has impressed me. In the past 3 years, I have watched how you treat other species you encounter. You do not conquer. You do not enslave. You seek cooperation and mutual benefit. Sarah felt a surge of pride but kept her expression neutral. We believe that the galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper together, Your Majesty. Yes, Vorthak nodded approvingly. This is why I have decided to make you an offer. Not just trade agreements or shipping rights, though those will be part of it. I am offering a true alliance between our peoples. One of his advisors leaned forward and whispered something in his ear. Vorthak's expression darkened for a moment, but he waved the advisor away. However, he continued, such an alliance requires more than words and signed documents. It requires a bond of trust that goes deeper than politics. Sarah exchanged glances with Marcus. What kind of bond, Your Majesty? Vorthak stood from his throne and walked to a large window that showed the stars beyond. Captain, are you familiar with the concept of diplomatic marriage? The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat, but she forced herself to remain calm. I am, Your Majesty, though it's not a common practice in human diplomacy anymore. No, I imagine not. Your species has moved beyond such primitive customs. He turned back to face her. But for the Zephyrians, it remains the highest form of alliance. The joining of royal bloodlines creates bonds that cannot be broken by changing political winds. You're suggesting a marriage between our species? Marcus asked, unable to hide his surprise. I am, Vorthak's gaze fixed on Sarah. Specifically, I am offering my daughter, Princess Lirelei, to be wed to a human representative. Someone of high rank and proven character. Sarah's mind raced. A diplomatic marriage was far beyond anything she had been authorized to negotiate. Your Majesty, this is ... unexpected. I would need to consult with Earth Command before... Of course. Vorthak interrupted gently. I do not expect an immediate answer. But I want you to understand what I'm offering. Princess Lirelei is my only child. Through her, your species would gain not just alliance, but eventual inheritance of the Zephyrian throne. That's incredibly generous, Sarah managed. One of the advisors stepped forward, clearly agitated. Your Majesty, perhaps we should discuss silence, Keller? Vorthak's voice carried absolute authority. The decision is made? The advisor Keller bowed but shot a look at Sarah that could have melted steel. It was clear that not everyone in the Zephyrian court approved of this offer. There is one thing I must make clear, Vorthak continued. My daughter is ... unique. She has been examined by our finest physicians and declared infertile. She will never bear children of her own. This means that while a human husband would inherit the throne, there would be no direct heirs to continue the line. Sarah noticed something strange in his voice when he said this. It wasn't sadness exactly, but there was something he wasn't telling them. I understand this may make the offer less appealing, Vorthak said. What king wants a crown that dies with him? But perhaps your people can see beyond immediate gain to the larger benefits of our alliance. May I ask, Sarah said carefully, why you've chosen to make this offer to humanity specifically? Surely there are other species who would be interested in such an arrangement. Vorthak smiled for the first time since they had boarded his ship. Captain, in the past year I have observed 17 different species in their interactions with others. The Corthan Imperium conquers and enslaves. The Brelic Consortium views everything as profit and loss. The Nexar Union cares only for technological advancement. He walked closer to the human delegation. But humans! Humans are different. When the Talarian refugee ships were stranded in the Kepler system, who provided aid without expecting payment? When the mining accident trapped 300 Velkan workers on Titan VII, who mounted the rescue mission? When the plague struck the Indori colonies, who shared their medicine freely? We do what we believe is right, Sarah said simply. Exactly. Vorthak's eyes gleamed. You do what is right, not what is profitable or advantageous. This is why I trust you with my daughter's future. This is why I believe a human could rule the Zephyrian people with wisdom and compassion. Marcus leaned forward. Your Majesty, may I ask about Princess Lirelei? What is she like? How does she feel about this arrangement? Vorthak's expression softened noticeably. My daughter is brilliant, compassionate, and strong-willed. She speaks 7 languages and has studied the cultures of dozens of species. She also, he paused, choosing his words carefully, has some unconventional ideas about many things. From the way his advisors shifted uncomfortably, Sarah gathered that unconventional ideas was putting it mildly. She has agreed to this arrangement? Sarah asked, She suggested it, Vorthek replied, surprising everyone. 3 months ago, she came to me and proposed that the future of our people lay not in isolation, but in joining with a species that shared our values. She specifically mentioned humanity as a potential partner. She sounds remarkable, Sarah said, and meant it. She is. Which brings me to my next point. Vorthok returned to his throne. I will not force this marriage on either party. If your people agree to consider the proposal, I want the potential husband to meet Lirelei first. Not as king and subject, but as two individuals getting to know each other. Love may not be necessary for a diplomatic marriage, but mutual respect and understanding are essential. Sarah nodded. That seems very reasonable, Your Majesty. Good. Now, assuming your Earth Command is interested, who would you recommend as a candidate? The question caught Sarah off guard. She hadn't expected to be asked to make a recommendation on the spot. Her mind immediately went through the senior officers she knew. It would need to be someone of appropriate rank, someone with diplomatic experience, someone who could handle the pressure of potentially ruling an alien civilization. I would need to review personnel files and consult with my superiors, she said diplomatically. Of course, but I am curious about your initial thoughts. As a human, who among your people would you trust with such responsibility? Sarah considered this carefully. The choice would need to be someone who embodied the best of humanity, someone who could prove that humans were worthy of this incredible trust. She thought of the various admirals and diplomats she knew, but somehow her mind kept coming back to one person. Commander David Torres, she said finally. He's young for such responsibility, but he's proven himself in first contact situations. He's fluent in 6 alien languages, has a degree in xenocultural studies, and has successfully negotiated 3 separate peace treaties. Most importantly, he genuinely cares about doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Sarah realized she might have revealed more about her personal opinion of David than was strictly professional, but it was too late now. Interesting, Vorthok mused. And what